I suppose from my first year of school, I remember already not fitting in and struggling, not understanding questions and getting into trouble from the teacher and finding it hard to pay attention in class. You know, the teacher got everyone to write down the number 1 and she described them as sergeant majors because it was like a soldier, and everyone else seemed to get it and do it immediately. I didn't understand what she meant, and I just thought of a character I knew from a TV show called Sergeant Major and started drawing him, and that's when I knew that I was going to have a hard time. My name is Rossie Stone. I am 26 years old. I am the creator and founder of Dekko Comics Limited, and I have dyslexia.
Who here has ever found a school subject difficult? I found all of these things difficult too. I was someone who struggled a lot at school. I did very badly at it. I found it difficult to read, write, and pay attention in school.
When I got the results of that I was dyslexic, it was actually a big load off my shoulders. It was a relief. You know, because the report came back and said my intelligence all this time had been above average and that it wasn't stupid. And for many years I believed it was real stupidity. So hearing that and hearing that wasn't anything to do with that was a great relief. It didn't make things easier necessarily, but it was better than feeling that I was just doomed or should give up on myself or anything. Falling in love with comics, I think it was when I was 6 years old, when I was looking at these big Beano annuals. It's a very popular comic here in Britain, and I was reading these whole compilation books of them. I couldn't read the words at the time, but I loved the pictures. I loved that I could sort of follow the story just by looking at the pictures alone. In my last year of secondary school, that's when I found my own way, just out of sheer frustration of trying really hard and getting a poor result.
I love comics. Comics are my life, and this is just me turning the thing that I don't enjoy so much, because I didn't enjoy school very much. I turned it into comic strips to make it easier for myself and more fun for myself.
I tried the mind maps and I tried the highlighting in sheets, highlighting the key points, and I did all these things to try and help me. And that was when I just decided, what do I like doing in my spare time? I like playing computer games, but obviously I can't make my own computer game. But I also really love making my own comic strips and reading comics and graphic novels and drawing pictures. I'm always doodling in class, so I just thought, why don't I use some of that? So it started off by just me, for my history exam, just doing post-it notes where I was a bit more visual. And what I did write down, I used colours and turned the title for each card into a picture. And then I started doing it for English. I made a drawing out of the Shakespeare quotes and stuck them around my house. That's quite a common technique, I think. There was a quote I was trying to remember called, it was Macbeth saying, "Full of scorpions is my mind." And so I drew a picture of a man with a bulging head full of scorpions and coming out of his ears and stuff. And that stuck with me. So I found actually this is quite fun. This is working. I'm quite enjoying this. And that's when I thought, why not take this a step further? Why don't I just go ahead and take a page of my modern studies revision notes and turn it into a comic? And I did that, and I just had a couple of characters bantering the information back and forth. It was fun to make, and weirdly it was even more fun to read. Finding that I could understand the information this way. It was going in with a visual and a point of narrative, and it felt more like remembering a Simpsons episode than remembering a textbook, and that was exciting to me, and that's when I made more of them. I was actually quite shocked to see that it actually boosted my grades as a result. What inspired my company was this technique and the fact that it had been growing with me since university, that I wanted to help other people who might have struggled like me, and I wanted to give people the positive reactions that I got watching those Disney films growing up and reading those comics for myself growing up. So I wanted to combine those two passions, the thing I could do to help and the thing that was just a love passion. So Dekko Comics is essentially a series of wacky comic strips that turn the general school curriculum information into entertaining comic stories. We communicate information through the comic strip format, which has a lot of benefits in its own right. The panel by panel basis of comics and the fact that the visuals have to dominate the words rather than the other way around means that you're forced to be concise with information. It helps because it gives you a picture and a point of story to remember the information by. So that's two very powerful tools. And that is what I think really breaks down the motivational barrier and makes people want to pick up these comics. Maths, for example, can be a bit of a chore for a lot of pupils, figuring out how it works and then figuring it out as sums, what does this letter mean? What does X, what does Y mean? Why is it X and Y and so on? So we turned that into a story about a witch and a wizard who had made a potion that would solve their math sums for them. But the potion goes wrong because they used alphabet soup as one of their ingredients, and so all the sums come out, but instead of being answered correctly, they have letters in them. And then they start using their magic and their little beams of light and stuff to figure out these puzzles just in a natural way as if they're trying to fix their potion, rather than as a sort of like, come on kids, it's time to learn. You know, you care about it because it's a couple of dopey wizards getting into a mess and finding their own way to fix it. It is all about making the story most interesting first. Through all that journey, yeah, it has just made me feel I don't want other people to go through that when it's not necessary. You know, I'm not saying that there's not benefits from going through that struggle, going through that adversity and coming out the other side smiling. But at the same time, there's a lot of unnecessary struggles I didn't need to go through. The advice I would have for parents is don't dismiss them too quickly when it comes to like they go to what they enjoy rather than doing what you think they should do to improve. I would look closer at what do they actually like, what are they actually enjoying, what do they escape to, what actually makes this child happy. It's worth looking for that and worth letting the child explore that with a focus of using that to overcome whatever they're struggling with.